You're listening to the Black Eagles podcast with Sinan Schwarting and Kaan Bayazit.
Ahmet Dursun Sergen aldı. Sergen Bülent yan yana. Sergen Bülent. Sergen. Yanında Tümer var. Tümer'e doğru aksın kaybetti. Tümer topu aldı. Sergen aldı. Gol! 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 Sergen attı. Sergen attı. Şampiyonluk geldi. Sergen attı. Şampiyonluk geldi.
Hello, amigo. How are you? Come to Beşiktaş.
No digáis nada, no os entendería.
Hey Black Eagles fans, and welcome back to the long-awaited transfer episode after what was a very long and stressful summer mercato, I'm sure, for all of you. The Beşiktaş signed 7 new players, 3 of which we have already done an episode on, so the remaining 4 we owed you, and we are doing a special episode on them too. On today's episode we have 4 special guests: Oliver Zesiger, Michael van Vaerenbergh, Allen Dodson, and Mohammed Ali. These guys will be talking about our new transfers: Mohamed Elneny, Abdoulaye Diaby, Georges-Kévin Nkoudou, and of course, the long-awaited episode for Victor Ruiz. And we're going to be starting now straight away with that Victor Ruiz episode with Allen Dodson of Villarreal USA.
Hello, amigo. How are you? Come to Beşiktaş.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. We're here to talk about one of our new transfers this window, and that player is Victor Ruiz. I promised you this episode a while ago. It took a while. We've seen Victor Ruiz in action for a couple of games now, but I'm here speaking to Allen Dodson of Villarreal USA. He's the head writer there. Allen, thank you very much for joining us and telling us a little bit more about Victor Ruiz.
Sure, you're welcome. Happy to be able to chime in. So Ruiz has had I think by and large a fairly successful career at Villarreal. I think he was a little bit polarizing to the fan bases last year or so here. But that was partly, I think, just due to the fact that the team was struggling overall last year. I've always thought he was a player who I think always had potential. I think when Marcelino was coach, he really worked with him and made him a better defender. I mean, that's kind of what Marseille is known for. So I think it was a situation for us where I think probably he wanted to move and we wanted to move as well. Not that it was we were tired of him, so to speak, but I think the feeling was we needed to try something different, and I think he wanted to try something different.
Yeah, we've seen him in action at Beşiktaş now for 3 games. He started in all 3 of the first opening games of the season. Beşiktaş did not have to play any qualifiers, but we've seen him in action in the Super League. And despite the fact that Beşiktaş actually lost on the opening match day 3-0, which is a pretty irregular thing for Beşiktaş, I can tell you. That doesn't happen too often. I can't actually remember last time we had such a poor display on the first match day. But I do have to say, Victor Ruiz was like one of the few bright spots in that match. Despite the scoreline, he was excellent. I think he was flawless in that game. Then last week, Beşiktaş played against... I'm already... blowing out now on the team. We played Göztepe, and he had another phenomenal performance. And then the other day, this past weekend, we played against Çaykur Rizespor. That match ended in a 1-1, and he actually, again, a really good performance, except for one moment where he could have given away a penalty, but I think it was just outside the box where a player headed the ball past him and then kind of ran into him, but for some reason he decided to lift his arm up. Don't know why he did that. But apart from that, I mean, we've been really pleased with what we've seen. Really good build-up play, and crucial tackles, interceptions, blocks. Yeah, just the player we think we've been looking for a long time. Basically, have been looking for a left-footed ball-playing midfielder for quite some time. And it's all looking good so far, but please do tell us what was the fact that made him such a polarizing figure for the last year or so at Villarreal, because I heard...
I think basically... So we had for a while our center backs. We sort of had a rotation of 3 that of which he was one, and he basically played in our system, the center backs typically play quite a ways up the pitch most of the time, and so he did that. The problem for us, I think, is that he's not a very fast player, and so in our system, we really work best when we have a fast center back and one who's not so fast. If you think back to somebody like Eric Bailly or Gabriel, we wanted, you need somebody who can kind of take on those one-on-ones and catch up with defenders when there's a long ball played beyond you. But you also need the player like Ruiz, who's a more calm on the ball and can win it in midfield, win headers and things like that. He sort of, for whatever reason, fell out of favor last year with Coach Calleja. I don't know quite what happened. He's always had a bit of a fiery temperament, I would say, and that may have been part of it. He may not have taken so well to becoming less important in the rotation. I don't know. I mean, but that would be my speculation. What he's really, I think what you commented about, a couple of the things he's very good at are things that you mentioned. He's a very good, he was one of the only players of our center back trio who was really good at passing out of the back and really sort of seeing the game more like a midfielder in that sense. So in that respect, I think that's always been a strength of his game. He's also good at blocking shots. He's not the most mobile defensively, but he's good at sort of getting himself in front of the ball, and he's also good at on corners at coming up and trying to head the ball in the net too.
Yeah, and early on, I think I do feel like his partnership with Domagoj Vida has already looked quite promising. I mean, we've in the past had the problem with Vida that he didn't really have the most reliable partner, and I always had the feeling that he kind of had to compensate for that. But now with Ruiz, there's just, I don't know, I don't feel any worry, so to speak, whenever the opponents are attacking. Even despite the fact that we lost on match day 1, but like I said, defensively the back line has looked very solid. I mean, we lost 3-0 on the opening match day, but that was all individual mistakes. One from Gary Medel in midfield, one from Quaresma not doing his job in tracking back and marking the fullback, and the third one was a little bit of a goalkeeper mistake, I'd say, and just that central duo has looked really good early on. And yeah, the things you say is that you're highlighting are stuff we've noticed with his build up. I think that's why we brought him in. That was the profile of player the club was going after. Is there anything else you think we can expect of him that I don't know? Like you said, he has a little bit of a fiery temperament. Is he someone that's maybe going to let the team down at some point, take a stupid red card or give away a dumb penalty, stuff like that? Is he prone to brain farts, so to speak?
Well, I guess my opinion there is colored a little bit by the fact that I was at Anfield when we played Liverpool a couple of years ago in the Europa League semis, and he ended up getting a red card in that game, and the first yellow was basically for dissent, and I don't remember even what it was about. It was in the first half, and then in the second half, there was a challenge on Adam Lallana, I think it was, sort of at the top of the box, and Ruiz made a clumsy challenge. It was the kind of thing, frankly, the referee could have let go instead of giving him a second yellow and giving him his marching orders. But I think Ruiz had probably been barking at the referee for a while, and he kind of thought, "Hey, you're out of here. I'm not going to give you any benefit of the doubt." That's a fairly rare occurrence, but it will happen. He can sometimes get in. In situations like that. I wouldn't say it will happen often, but you might expect it. He might get a red card a year or something like that. He's not. he's positionally, I think, pretty astute. I think that's one thing that Marcelino really worked with him on. And he's not going to get caught out of position many times and make a red card challenge for something like that. So I think that's okay. I think he will. There are going to be occasions where he makes a watch him when it comes to controlling high balls in midfield, because it seems like all of our center backs have difficulties judging those sometimes, and he was one. So, if I were the opposition, that's one thing I would look to put him under pressure when there's a high ball cleared from the box and he's going up for it, something like that.
And in terms of physical decline, for example, he's 30 years old right now. That's not very old for a defender, but some people's bodies age quicker than the other person.
No,
so.
I think he's fine in that respect. I don't see him any different. When he was playing last season, I didn't see physically he was any different than he had been, 3 years ago.
Okay, that's great to hear. Well, I think that's pretty much wraps it up. Thank you very much, Alan, for your insights on our new signing, Victor Ruiz Torre. And we'll be continuing this episode with the rest of our summer transfers that happened in the last week or so, because there's been a bunch of those. So, Alan, thank you very much. And good luck with Villarreal USA, and good luck to Villarreal in the season. And maybe we can meet in the Champions League, hopefully, next season.
Hey, that would be fun, wouldn't it?
It would be.
Yeah, well, we get to see Victor Ruiz again, which would not be a bad thing. I think I'm one of the people who really respected his time at the club, and really I'm happy that he's found a new home. It sounds like it's working out.
So far it is, but it's only 3 matches in, so let's keep our fingers crossed. But the coach really likes him, and it was a player he insisted on, the profile of the player at least, so he's going to have an important role in the team for sure. And I think Villarreal a couple of years ago had like the best defense in La Liga, except for maybe Barcelona and Real or something, but they had like a really good defensive...
Yeah, that was when Marcelino was there, and that was really his focus. And since then, we sort of lost that, and now we seem to be trying to outscore the opposition all the time.
Well, believe me, we've had our fair seasons of those, but now we're in a season where everything starts from the back, without actually ignoring the offensive play. But at the moment, our productivity in front of goal isn't as good, but the football is starting to look decent. So that's a good start for us, at least.
That's a good start. Yeah, one last thing I would say about Ruiz in passing is that, because I'm not that familiar with the Turkish league, so you can tell me if this. I think in Spain, the emphasis on speed in attack and quick the quick what I want to say, the very technically astute players means that defenders it's a little different than playing, he played in Serie A for Napoli, and that's a different style. Mm-hmm. And I think he's much more suited to that style of play, really. I think Marcelino did a really good job at sort of adapting him to the Spanish league. But I think it sounds to me as though in Turkey he'll find a really good place to play.
Fingers crossed. Thanks, Alan.
Yeah. All right.
Hello, amigo. How are you? Come to Beşiktaş.
Hello, Black Eagles, and welcome back. Today we're talking about our new signing, Georges-Kévin Nkoudou. And joining me live right now from Paris, I think it is, Mohammed Ali, a sports journalist who focuses on Olympique Marseille. Mo, thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing me on.
So, Mo, this is a little bit of a transfer that kind of came out of left field for us. Beşiktaş were working on a couple of different options on the left wing. But Nkoudou came out at the end, and we were a little bit surprised by that it's a full transfer and all that, but I'm not going to bore you with all that information. But he's a bit of a question mark for us, because over the past 3 or so years since he signed with Tottenham, he hasn't really played a lot of football, so to speak. He had a short loan spell both at Monaco and one at Burnley. The last 6 months of the previous season he spent at Monaco, but he had a hamstring injury which basically took him out for nearly the entire loan spell. So what we're going to do is go a little bit further back in time, and we're going to talk to you since you cover Marseille, of course, and he kind of had his breakout season at Marseille 3 years ago. That's why Tottenham signed him. Basically, I just want to pick your brain on what you think of the player Nkoudou was back then, the potential he had, and whether you understand why Tottenham opted to sign him after just one season at Marseille.
Yeah, no, it's a difficult question when it comes to Nkoudou. It's been, I think, several years since he's played at the top level. You've mentioned sort of poor seasons at Tottenham, Burnley and Monaco earlier this year. So it's been, I think, well, he's 24 years old, so maybe in the 6 years that he's been a professional, you'd have to go back to his one season at Marseille and the year before his breakout season at Nantes to find a really good performance. And if he replicates his 2015-16 performance for OM in Istanbul, Beşiktaş will have sort of a nifty player for them. That year he was relatively decent. That year, a lot of OM fans can remember to be a very barren year for several reasons. It was the season after Marcelo Bielsa left, and it was Bielsa who first saw Nkoudou playing for Nantes and ended up negotiating a very low-cost €1 million deal to bring him to the Velodrome. And as a left winger, he was very good. As you can imagine, with some of these sort of wingers, they are mostly show and relatively low substance. So, pace, dribbling, able to beat a man. But the most important thing is how they deliver balls into the box, how they create danger, move into the central areas. And Nkoudou did a lot of that, mainly because he had a coach, Michel, who succeeded Bielsa, who allowed him a bit of free rein. And Marseille didn't have a lot of options as well in attack, other than Batshuayi at the time. So Nkoudou would take a lot of the responsibilities in being sort of free rein over that left area. And he did really well. He scored, I think, 5 goals in Liga that year. And in Europe, in the Europa League, did pretty well. In fact, he was somehow named in the UEFA Best Poll, the Best Player in Europe poll that summer. Ended up in 30th place, which is a very good, sort of indication of how well he did that year. Even though it was a bit surprised that he ended up there. So for that year in Marseille, he was an interesting player. He was good on the ball. He worked well in creating opportunities for the forward, even though Marseille as a whole had a very, very challenging year. And that was why Tottenham had signed him. And for those that remember at the time, Tottenham waited about 6 weeks to get the player in, even though a deal had been agreed long before. But for some reason or another, it just took a long while, and Tottenham persevered to get that deal over the line. And he ended up replacing a player of his profile who didn't do too well, Clinton Ng, who moved to Marseille in Nkoudou's place and now has signed for Moscow in this window. So it's hard to see sort of how this player can sort of reinvigorate his career after 3 barren seasons. He's only played, I think, 20 or 30 times for Tottenham over 3 years. He didn't do too well at Burnley. Maybe I think the Premier League, the style of play in the Premier League and the intensity might have had something to do with it. But he had a chance to come back to Monaco and reinvigorate his career there, but for injuries and one thing or another, he only played a handful of games there. So, at the end of the day, Beşiktaş have got a player who has a lot to prove. And the player in this situation, when they move to a place like Turkey, Turkey is not an easy place to play in. It's definitely a place where players who haven't done well in England or the top leagues to have a second chance. But if they fail there, there's nowhere else to go. Sort of your career at the top level team is now sort of over, and that's why you see a lot of players doing really, really well in Turkey, reinvigorating their careers. Beşiktaş, for example, have benefited from that in the last couple of years. So I can see the reason why Beşiktaş have gone for that sort of player, but also it's a low cost deal. It's not going to be a big risk for them to take him on, but there's a lot of benefits to come from it.
Well, it's a low cost deal, relatively speaking, if you look at the transfer market these days. But trust me, for Beşiktaş, 5 million euros is a lot of money. They don't spend that too often. That's literally brings him in the top 10 of most expensive transfers of all time for the club. So it is a player they are clearly putting some faith in. So my question for you is, how would you describe him as a player? Like, what are his main strengths? What would you say makes him stand out? And you already kind of addressed his profile a little bit, but maybe you can put a little bit more emphasis on his strengths and weaknesses.
Right. So he is a very pacey player. He has a lot of pace on him. A very good dribble of the ball. And one thing that makes me stand out is that he likes to take on a defender. He likes to take on a defender, and more often than not beats them. So he hugs the touch line very, very closely in playing deep, going forward, and loves to receive the ball in from a right back or from the midfield, and then takes on the player, then attempts to cut in with a cross and deliver the ball forward. That's sort of the style of play that he does. He's also a player that likes to drift in centrally. If sort of the tactics or the way the manager set up affords him to. At Marseille, he will do that regularly, in that he will start from the left wing, but more often than not, because of the lack of forward options, he will double up as a sort of a player that moves centrally, maybe as a second striker at times. On actually a couple of occasions, he did play as a forward for Marseille because of injuries or whatnot. So that's the sort of profile that you're looking at. And that's his strengths. His weaknesses is that not a lot of tracking back. He is definitely a forwards player. So there are plenty of players who combine attacking and defensive combinations. He's one player that sort of rarely drops beyond the halfway line and just likes to receive the ball in the position rather than gaining it deep in, moving it forward, and then receiving the ball further up. He's somebody that sort of hangs around in a specific area and is largely unlikely to drop back and whatnot. And further weakness, I'd say, would be decision-making at times. I think he improved that from Nantes to Marseille, where he had a set sort of responsibility in beating his player and then delivering the ball in the final third. His cross sort of completion rate wasn't pretty high. His ability to create danger in the final third, which is the most important place, can be on and off. And inconsistency is also something that has been a problem. So, at Marseille, there'll be stretches that he would be the team's best player or second best player and the first name on the team sheet. And then at times you're thinking, well, he hasn't produced anything of note in the last 3-4 games. We need to bring on another player who can play. The problem with Marseille was there was no other player who was at his level, so we would be stuck during his sort of dry period. Inconsistency at final third sort of proficiency can be a bit questionable at times, and I think that's what contributed to Tottenham freezing him out. They've signed him, they've given him a chance. And in a very intense league like the Premier League, and for a high flying club like Tottenham, 9 million is nothing to them. And if a player doesn't work out after the first month or two, they're very quickly going to move on to somebody else. And I think it's been very apparent from the first year that they wanted to move him on. Nkoudou's only played in sort of international Champions Cup matches, pre-season matches since, because there was an idea that he was not going to, improve, suddenly become a first-name player at Tottenham, and they've since moved on and bought other wingers like Lucas Moura from Paris Saint-Germain 18 months ago. So it's a bit, he had the chances to show a different pace at Burnley and Monaco, but for injuries that hasn't happened. So hopefully at Beşiktaş, in a different environment, he's able to sort of rekindle the flame and become a player that he was 3 years ago, because he's 24. He's still relatively young. There's a lot of potential there, and there's a lot of lost time. So I think the environment is right in a different league, and Beşiktaş still, offered the opportunity and potential of title challenge and European competition and whatnot. So there's a lot of gains to be made there.
Yeah, plus a lot of players have moved on in the past couple of years. And for example, Marcelo went to Lyon. We have other examples of players that like Abu Bakar, who was just on loan with us, but he went on and had a really good season at Porto until he unfortunately got an ACL injury and stuff like that. So Beşiktaş have had a good track record as well with rekindling the careers of players like a Mario Gomez, for example, too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So when you think of Nkoudou, would you say he's a player that prefers to look for a cross, or someone who's going to try and get his shot in? What type
but I mean, it depends. It depends where in the field that he is, but I definitely say that the first sort of port of call is going to be dribbling past a player. And there's some teams who play very, very deep and put several men behind the ball. So you can already see that option doesn't work out. So I'm not going to call him a one-trick pony, that he has the same move over and over again, because obviously Arjen Robben is famous for that, but that never stopped him becoming the world-class player that he was.
Definitely.
So, Nkoudou is somebody who would, first of all, try to beat a player, then look for a shot, and then sort of opt for the cross. So he's more of, trying to open up a position and trying to test the goalkeeper. It's highly unlikely that he's a crossing man. That's not his main proficiency. His main proficiency is sort of stretching out the defense, going into danger areas, and then moving the ball centrally, whether it's through a shot for himself and carving it out, or creating space. Creating space is a big thing for him. So yeah.
So he's also going to benefit his teammates basically by stretching out the defense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I think he's one of the players that play to their strengths rather than playing to a set sort of team structure. There are players whose personal qualities are sort of hindered because the manager wants them to play a certain way. So far in his career, he's somebody that's really used his strengths, and managers have looked to use his strength, and his strength is pace and dribbling proficiency. So you can use that in drawing out defenders, creating space for other players, or running at a team, especially on the break, on the counter, very, very effective in taking the ball and just running with it, and other players are able to join you, and then really causing damage when a defensive team is at a loss and they need to track back. So that's the sort of positions where he wants to exploit, and hopefully he has opportunity to do that.
And how would you say is his off the ball movement when he's not on the ball himself? How is it? How are his runs?
Well, his runs, his ability to sort of find space and make runs offensively is pretty good. And again, for your listeners, I'm only talking about his time at Marseille. He hasn't had a lot of opportunity to play elsewhere. And at Monaco, I just remember that he basically didn't play that much to sort of flicker on anyone's radar. I think he only played like 2 or 3 league games at Monaco or something like that. So off his ball, like I mentioned earlier in the conversation, defensively, he's not tracking back a great deal. He hasn't got experience of tracking back a lot. So if you're expecting the player to sort of come back and make amends or cover, especially when your own team is being counted against, it's unlikely that he'll be proficient in following that defensively. But offensively, he is pretty good in creating in spaces through his movements, and defenders are often keeping an eye on him in that his movements is causing space elsewhere on the pitch. So he has good sort of fluency in in making runs off the ball, enabling opportunities for teammates to pass to him in an interesting position. At times, that sort of keenness, it gets him offside more than a couple of times. At Marseille, him and his teammate Alessandrini, who's now in Los Angeles, were very well noted by the number of offsides they would make because of their movement, because of their keenness to beat the man. So we'll see how that goes.
Okay, and then finally, what would you say about his finishing ability? If he comes one-on-one with a goalkeeper, how's his ability? Is he the type of winger that just hits the ball and hopes it goes in, or is he someone that can actually beat the goalkeeper on skill, whether it's going by past him or placing a proper shot?
No, I think his finishing ability is pretty good. He hasn't scored the most amount of goals, but that's because for one reason or another, like I said, Marseille had a very barren year, so it's not exactly down to him. But the fact that even in Marseille's worst season, that Tottenham managed to come in for a €9 million bid for him, just sort of proves. And also, Batshuayi that year also went for a big fee. But his finishing ability is pretty good. He scored 5 goals and made 3 assists for Marseille in 28 games. He had a very good year in creating opportunities, in developing nice goals. His finishing is not the sort of player that just picks up the ball from 25 yards out, has an opportunity, and then strikes the ball. I refer you to his game against Saint Etienne, that Marseille won away from home against a team that were higher in the league than they were. Scored one and made the other, 2 very, very nice goals that the team made, one from his own boot. So he's a player that likes to be perfectionist when it comes to finishing, not just sort of the strike and we'll see where it goes. When it goes over the bar or well wide, there's no thoughts. There's some thoughts, in his finishing, but it doesn't take the biggest amount of shots, which is the issue. So it's about also converting the opportunities that comes his way as well. And that's something that he needs to improve, especially in that a player that's that high up on the pitch is expected to bring his fair share of goals as well, rather than just create opportunities. And that's just the way that the football world works these days. It's not so the burden sort of doesn't rely on the 1 or 2 strikers that you have, but the left winger or the right winger is expected to come and chip in with about 7 to 10 league goals or something like that. That's the mark of a truly attack-minded winger. So hopefully that's something he's able to improve. He's only scored 7 top-flight goals in his career for Marseille and Nantes. So that's something that needs to be improved for sure.
Okay, well, thank you, Mohammed Ali, for your analysis of our new player, Georges-Kévin Nkoudou. At Mohammed Ali _93 on Twitter, you can follow him for anything about Olympique Marseille and French football. It's a great account to follow if you don't speak French and you prefer to get your news in English. Mo, thank you very much for joining us. And
thank you very much.
Hello, amigo.
Thank you.
How are you? Come to Beşiktaş.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. We're here to talk to Oliver Zesiger right now about Mohamed Elneny, because obviously Elneny, he's been playing for Arsenal for the past couple of years, but he had his heyday, so to speak, at FC Basel, and Oliver Zesiger is an expert when it comes to Swiss football. He is a professional scout, and he also works on the Football Manager database. For all of you who enjoy Football Manager, some of those wonder kits you all like to buy early on, Oliver probably has a hand in those. So Oliver, thank you very much for joining us on the show.
Thanks for having me.
So Oliver, like I said, the reason I'm talking to you is because I want to get the view of someone who has seen Elneny in his prime, probably playing at a similar level that he will in Turkey, because at Arsenal, let's be honest, it wasn't a massive success. I think he played a very decent amount of games in 3.5 years, but he never really lived up to the expectations, I guess you could say. And reviews may be a little bit overly negative because that's how it tends to go when a player doesn't fully live up to their expectations. But I want to get your professional opinion on the player. First and foremost, how did you generally see him at FC Basel? How did he perform?
He got gradually better from season to season. When he first arrived, he arrived on loan for 6 months only, and then Basel made it permanent, and he got better from season to season, and he really earned that move. I think I've rarely read or heard so many positive voices from Basel fans about the transfer, because he really earned that big step to Arsenal. And while he's not a flashy player, he was very well liked by the Basel supporters because he has that hard-working mentality, and that's what football fans in general, I think, still like today.
Yeah, and of course, Basel have an amazing track record when it comes to Egyptian players because, of course, Mohamed Salah had his career launched at the club in Europe, and then he, of course, went on to AS Roma and now Liverpool and is one of the best players in the world. Elneny, unfortunately for him, his step to the big leagues didn't pan out quite as such, but still a player that has proven himself at Basel, and there's been plenty of those still. For example, El Younousi, I think he just went on loan to Celtic. Beşiktaş were linked with him too. Another player that had a great little stint at Basel for 2 years. Obviously, he's not Egyptian, but just an example there. But what would you say are Elneny's main strengths and also his shortcomings? Where did he, when you saw him at Basel, still need to work on? What did he need to improve to become an elite level midfielder at the time?
So I'd say that he's able to run for 90 minutes. So his stamina is absolutely exceptional. His work rate on the pitch, the ground he can cover, especially off the ball, is also fantastic. He has a good ball. He has a good long ball to switch sides. For example, in counter-attacking situations from the back or in build-up situations, of course. About his shortcomings, he's really not a player for the final third of the pitch. So he's not a good finisher. He has not a final ball that basically gives him 5 or 10 assists per season. And his shot is wonky. So he has scored great goals from outside the box, but in general, he doesn't shoot too often. That's another mistake from him, because actually he could shoot, but he doesn't shoot too often. And he should be more confident when it comes to his shot, but he doesn't show it too often.
And do you think that's something that he doesn't dare to do out of himself? Is he a little bit too timid for that, or might it be a coach instruction? Because I remember with, for example, Ricardo Quaresma at Beşiktaş, his first stint at Beşiktaş and also at Porto, he always took shots from distance and he scored some absolute screamers. It was really a specialty for him. But then in his second stint, I really had the impression that he was told by the coach, don't shoot, try to find the footballing solution, and he rarely took a shot. Do you think it's something that stems from himself, or is it more maybe coaches that give him that task not to shoot?
I think it comes from tactical instructions, because Elneny at Basel was played as an 8, and now at Arsenal was more played like a 6. I have not seen most of the games he played for Arsenal, but whenever he played, I thought he played as a 6. So he's late arriving in the final third, and then obviously you have 7 defenders ahead of you, plus maybe 5 or 6 teammates, and it makes no sense to shoot from there. At the beginning, at Basel, he was hesitant to shoot. It wasn't a tactical instruction. It was him that was not confident enough in his shot, and that grew into a really good shot and into a really confident player at the club. But in general, I think tactical instructions prevent him from scoring more, or from shooting more from distance.
And I've also heard that I believe at Basel he was taking set pieces, direct and indirect free kicks, and corners as well. Is that something that is can be considered a specialty, or is my information wrong here?
I think your information is a bit incorrect. I can't remember him ever scoring from a set piece or a free kick in this case. It's possible that he took some free kicks, and especially indirect ones, I think, because his shot is rather hard, not very accurate. And corners, I can't remember really, but I don't think it was him who took the corners, because Basel usually has a number 10 or a winger who takes the corners.
Yeah, and I think Salah was there at least for the first season or so that wouldn't make too much sense. I'm not sure where I read that. It might have been a scouting report before he went to Arsenal, so those guys fooled me. Anyway, another question. Beşiktaş are mainly getting him as a 6, but I do have the impression that Abdullah Avci does not want to play with a traditional 6. He wants to, play a straightforward 4-3-3 without really a traditional 6 that focuses solely on defense. But he's also, for example, now he's playing with a false left back and stuff like that. It's very interesting to see. But the emphasis seems to be on kind of the same type of football that you would see from Dortmund, trying to recover the ball within 5 or 6 seconds. Same, of course, of Barcelona. Abdullah Avci is a really big fan of Pep Guardiola's style of play, so that's what we saw mainly in the last game against Rizespor, especially in the first half. It was really impressive. Beşiktaş had an average ball recovery of 5.8. Do you think that Elneny is the right type of player to fit into a system like that? Is he someone who can challenge for the ball, win the ball back quickly, cleanly? And how is he in terms of intercepting the ball? Generally speaking, in a defensive point of view, how would you see him fit into something like that?
I think he would be a good fit. He can read a game, which is another one of his strengths, that makes him perfect to intercept balls. I also think that he can help in a 4-3-3. He can help as a build-up man between the midfield, between the midfield and the goalkeeper. So, as I said before, with his long balls, with his ball distribution from the back. And he has a tactical discipline, and as I said, he works hard on the pitch. So he's really made for intercepting early attacks and win the ball back as quickly as possible, and then distribute it to a playmaker further up the pitch.
And in terms of intelligence on the ball, you said he's good at reading the game, to cut out passes, stuff like that. How is he in terms of keeping his head cool in difficult situations? For example, of course, in Turkey, we have these huge derbies with Galatasaray and Fenerbahce, where sometimes the opponents use tactics to try and provoke an emotional response, try to get players sent off. Beşiktaş have been the victim of that a lot, in not so much in recent years, but in the years prior, when we had a younger team where our players were a little bit naive and allowed themselves to get goated into those types of things. And now Beşiktaş have a younger team again, so it's a possibility that kind of stuff is going to happen again with experienced guys like Emre Belözoğlu at Fenerbahce. And I don't think Galatasaray necessarily have those profile of players who would try and do that right now. But yeah, in general, do you think he's the type of player that can keep his head cool under those types of high pressure situations?
I have to say, when he played in Switzerland, he has certainly not experienced something like you just explained, like the big derbies in Turkey was a step above the Swiss derbies that we have. Also, the Premier League, I mean, the biggest game we probably had in the Premier League was the North London Derby, and it's not the same emotion in this game. While it's a huge game, but it's not the same emotion from the stands and certainly not from the players on the pitch. But he is a very level-headed guy, so he's a very calm. He almost appears to be shy, and he's only seen one red card in his life. So I think there will be no problem with his discipline. But it can be very heated. He's played in Egypt, of course. He's Egyptian, and he may have had a derby or two at a young age there, where it was as heated or close to as heated as it will be in Turkey. But I don't think there will be a problem with him. As I said, he's calm. He's actually very he refrains himself very much. Rarely gives interviews, and on the pitch is rarely provoked, only in very special situations. But I don't think those derbies will pose a problem for him.
Oliver Zesiger, thank you very much for giving your insights on Mohamed Elneny. I can't really think of any more questions. From what I gather from what you just told us is basically that in the 4-3-3 system that Beşiktaş are probably going to be playing going forward, he should fit in well as the designated quote-unquote 6, even though he isn't really a default 6 like you would describe, for example, a Maxime Gonalon, for example. I think that's a more traditional 6 in modern day football. So thank you very much. I will add, of course, your Twitter tag, everything like that, where people can find you and follow you on Twitter. Definitely worth a follow to follow Oliver, because he has great insights, obviously. And just if you have any questions about players in Switzerland, for example, go pester him. I'm sorry, Oliver. Now you're gonna get bombarded.
Looking forward to it. I don't think I do, but we'll see.
Hello, amigo.
Thank you.
How are you? Come to Beşiktaş.
So we're continuing our preview of our new transfers this window with Abdoulaye Diaby, former player of Club Brugge in Belgium, and also, of course, Sporting Lisbon, the club where we loaned him from. But because he had his heydays in Belgium mainly, I am talking today with Michael van Vaerenbergh, who is a sports commentator for the Belgian Pro League and several major channels in Belgium, of course. And he also works for Sporza on Extra Time, and huge thing in Belgium, of course, the best talk show in Belgium, no contest. Michael, thank you very much for joining us on the show.
You're welcome.
Thank you for being here. It's always great to have a fellow Belgian on the show. Doesn't happen too often. We had Guillaume Mabe on last season for previewing Racing Genk, of course, in the Europa League. So you're the second Belgian on the show, not counting myself.
Very honored to be here.
So yeah, Diaby. I was trying to call him Dybala almost. That would have been a big news, and you would have been an expert on that as well, because of course you cover the Italian league too.
I think Beşiktaş would be better off with Dybala than with Diaby.
Yeah, it's a little bit above our pay grade, but let's talk about Abdoulaye Diaby. And I struggled remembering if he scored against us a few years ago, but I don't think it was at Bruges back then. That was Bolingoli, I believe, who scored those 2 stunning goals in Istanbul back then. But Abdoulaye...
You can be sure it was not Diaby, because he scored 0 goals in European tournaments for Club Bruges, so he did not score against you.
That's good to know. I think he arrived much later anyway. That was like 2016 or 17, I think. But he had, I believe, 2 seasons at Club Brugge, really good seasons.
In one season where he was
injured right?
lots of the time, but he didn't score that year. Mm-hmm. But the other 2 seasons were very, very good.
Yeah, and the main thing right now, what Beşiktaş fans are hoping to hear from you is he a striker or is he a winger? Because that's kind of the controversy. Beşiktaş were looking to get a striker on the final match day because the main striker, Burak Yilmaz, is having some injury issues, has missed the first 3 games of the season. Fans are getting worried a little bit that there's not really a proper backup. There's a young 20-year-old Güven Yalçın who's talented but not ready yet. Then there's Umut Nayir, who is 26, came from the 2nd division. He's a decent player, but again, it's not what Beşiktaş are looking for as a forward. So they needed a striker. They were linked with former Anderlecht player Okaka on the deadline day, which I found a little puzzling. But then suddenly the news broke. Diaby was on his way already to Istanbul, and he signed on loan from Sporting Lisbon. And then, of course, fans started looking him up, and it's like, oh wait, he played a lot on the wing at Sporting. He's only 1.73 m. That's very small. He's not really a striker. He's a winger. What is this? So, Michael, can you clarify for us a little bit what type of a player we can expect from Diaby?
Most definitely, he is a striker. He played under Marcel Keizer in Sporting from the wing, but he really enjoys playing with 3 strikers, with Bas Dost as the number 9, and then Diaby had to play from the left side. He didn't score much in Lisbon, but he gave lots of assists. But mainly he's a striker, and he's fitting a fitting striker in a 2-striker system, which he played in his last season in Club Brugge under Ivan Leko. They played 3-5-2, and he was partnered with Wesley of Aston Villa, and he scored lots of goals. The season before, he had a difficult season, as I already said, where he didn't score any goals, but was an injury-riddled season for Diaby. His first season was actually his best under Prud'homme. Then he played as a solo striker, as a solo number 9, and I guess he had 16 goals, 4 of them in the playoffs. In Belgium, we have playoffs to decide who becomes champion. He was a killer in the box. He's small, but he's very fast, very agile. And if you play him the right way, he can score lots of goals for Beşiktaş, and that's what a striker needs to do.
Yeah, and one of the main things what Beşiktaş are trying to do this season is combination football, high-pressure football. So the expectation is that the striker is also going to be able to link up well with the players on the wings, with the players in midfield. Do you think that Diaby is adequate in doing that, or is he more guided?
Not his strong suit. That's not his strong suit. I would say he is going to be the best striker in a 2-striker system. If you let him link up with a tall striker, target man, then he can play a shadow role behind him, and then it'll be very useful. But as a main striker, maybe coming off the bench when your team has some difficulties and they have to play reaction football, then Diaby can be a strong addition to Beşiktaş. But I don't think he's the best player to play link-up football, to keep the ball at his feet and let the other guys join in. No, that's not his best quality. I think he's very fast. He's very decisive, but he's not the combination striker, I think.
Yeah, and I believe in the playoffs that first season he scored a couple of really important goals.
He scored 2 goals against Anderlecht, one with the head, and he scored a second goal in the championship deciding game, which meant that Club Rouge became champion under Michel Prud'homme for the first time in 10 years. So it was a very, very important goal. And in his last season, he also scored twice against Anderlecht. So the fans of Club Rouge really remember that. He's not a legend. That would be an overreaction and exaggeration. But they remember him as a good striker who scored lots of goals and who was always there when needed in big games. When the challenge was really big, then he stood up. And I think that's very important when you play in Turkish League One.
Yeah, for sure. The pressure in Turkey, especially in the derbies, is immense. The expectations will be high. Missing opportunities is not something that fans appreciate in Turkey either. But you describe him as a clinical striker, is what I'm gathering, who can rise to the occasion in bigger games. So his feet aren't necessarily his best aspect. How is he on the ball in terms when he's up to speed? When they're trying to play him through with a true pass or something, that's something I would imagine he's good at. But
I wouldn't say he lacks technique. He is his technical ability is quite good actually, but he's not super refined. But he's a lefty, and I really like left-footed players, especially attackers. But he's somebody who, if you throw him a high ball, he will win his aerial duel. But if you play him a deep pass on the ground, then you can really be sure that he'll win his sprint against his opponent, and he doesn't need to think twice of shooting from outside of the box or inside of the box. He's really a guy who will shoot first, pass second. But if you play him right, that can be something to your advantage, Beşiktaş, if you play him in the right way.
That's kind of the similar trait that our young striker has too, but the problem there is he'll look for the shot first and the pass second, but the time in between that looking for the shot and the pass can take a little long. Last week, for example, against Göztepe, I think it was 2 or 3-0, and Nkoudou came in, made his debut, and it was a very simple ball to square for the young striker. He could have gave Nkoudou a tap in, but he took way too long deciding to shoot himself or pass it, and then finally when he made the decision to pass, the defender managed to intercept it. So But sometimes you need a striker that's selfish, as long as they don't take half a century to make a decision. Of course, decision making is key in any position in the attacking third, but especially for a striker.
But he's also a guy who will really enjoy playing with the likes of Nkoudou, with Adam Ljajic, with Jermaine Lens, guys who are creative, guys who are not selfish, but who enjoy giving the final ball. And I think if you play him with two strikers, and then maybe the first striker, who is a tall striker or who is a target man, can work as a decoy, and then he can just, with his speed in the first meters, he can just pop up and he'll definitely work the ball in one time past the goalkeeper. And I think that can play. That sounds like good music for Jermaine Lens and Nkoudou and Ljajic, who like clinical finishers, who like guys who don't need to think twice before striking. And I think Beşiktaş really has a good guy if you play him right, because I don't know which system Abdoulaye Diaby has in his mind, but if you play him right, or if you let him play the last 15 minutes of an important game when the defense is tired, then you have a golden guy in Abdoulaye Diaby.
Well, if you're interested in knowing, it's very it's something I haven't really seen yet. Have you seen many teams utilize a false left back? Because that's something.
Or what you mean? Like the company with Anderlecht, and like Man City did with Zinchenko, like inverted backs.
Yeah.
Like if they don't have the ball, they play left back. But if they have the ball, they go to the center of the field.
Yes.
To become an extra midfielder.
Exactly. That's exactly what he is doing. Abdoulaye Diaby is a huge fan of Pep Guardiola, so that may explain where that comes from. So that's kind of how Beşiktaş are trying to play. Also, how Pep likes to play, recovering the ball within 5 to 10 seconds or something after losing it. That's something last weekend we really started seeing that, because it's been a gradual process. Beşiktaş had a lot of injuries during the preseason camp, so it took a while. So we didn't really see it in the first match yet. In the second match, we started seeing some signs of that inverted back, and then in the third match, we started seeing the immense pressure that was being put on a good team like Çaykur Rizespor. In the first half, they recovered the ball within 5.8 seconds. It was really impressive, but unfortunately that match finished 1-1 because they didn't really have a clinical finisher up top. But hopefully now with Diaby being there and as an alternative to Burak Yilmaz, who is still going to be out for a week or two, I think they might have a proper player for that. But I don't know if he's going to fit in that system. Is he someone that shies away from doing some extra pressing work, or is that something he doesn't mind?
He had a really demanding coach in Marcel Keizer as well in Lisbon, who also believes you have to attack the ball immediately when you lost him. So I guess he has learned in Lisbon that the extra meters count defensively as well. But you have to wait. It's. I think Abdoulaye is not the easiest player. He's a. Not to say that he has a difficult character, but I don't think he's you need a manual to really know how to get the best out of him. So letting him do the extra meters, maybe he does that the second game he plays, but if he's a substitute 4 or 5 games in a row, I don't know if he'll do that when he enters the game. So it really depends. It's a guy you have to give a lot of confidence, and then he'll do those extra meters. But if you don't give him enough playing time, if you don't treat him with a lot of compliments on training, or if you just look at him as option number 3 or 4, then he'll probably it probably won't work at Beşiktaş, and he'll probably leave after 6 months or after one full season without the 5 million euro how do you say it? Buyout clause, yeah. So I think it's a guy who needs lots of confidence, but maybe in 2 weeks when Burak Yilmaz returns and Abdoulaye Diaby is flexible enough to try a different system when they have difficulties against a big team like Fenerbahce or Galatasaray, and they have to switch mid-match, then you have to bring him and partner him up with Burak Yilmaz, and that can really give a spark to a struggling team. But I think you need to realize that Abdoulaye Diaby maybe it's not the best option as striker A. So if you give him a role as a substitute, you have to give him 30 minutes each game, and then he'll be happy with the role as substitute. But if you only give him 10 minutes tops, or maybe some games 90 minutes on the bench, then he'll probably won't be happy anymore. And then you've got a problem, because an unhappy Abdoulaye Diaby is not a good fit for Beşiktaş. He's not a good player on the pitch and can be a nuisance in the dressing room as well, I think.
Okay, well, Michael van Vaerenbergh, thank you very much for your insights on Abdoulaye Diaby.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much, and maybe we'll talk to you again in the future.
Okay, thank you so much. Bye.
So once again, a very special thank you to all our guests today, giving their insights on our new transfers. Please do check the show notes and give them a follow on Twitter. These guys are absolutely worth following. And thank you very much for listening to this episode, in which we, of course, reviewed the final 4 transfers of Beşiktaş this window. And also, please don't forget to check out our upcoming Europa League preview for Group K. And also go and check out the Europa League and Champions League previews on Football a la Turca coming up somewhere next week. Thank you all for listening to the Black Eagles podcast, and go Beşiktaş!
Ortada Bobo. Şimdi Bobo'nun önüne. Bobo aldı. Bobo girdi. Bobo. 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 Bobo çok babasın. Çok harikasın. Çok güzelsin. Harika. 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 Bobo. 2-0. 2-0. 2-0. 2-0. Lovren geldi.
Beşiktaş International hopes you enjoyed this program.